podcast all about hit social deduction game Blood on the Clock Tower and the distinguished opinions of its players. Joining myself, Mia Gwen, in a visit to the Duchess tonight, my first guest is the second most famous improviser from their hometown, because Colin Mockery is also from there. It's Mara Joy. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and where people might know you from.
I'm Marjoy. You've probably seen me play Blood on the Clock Tower on No Rose Bard, Noobs on the Goof Tower, Pata's stream, Arif's stream, the TP. I play it a lot.
It's lovely to have you here. My second guest has promised that they'll send me a fun fact to add in post production. It's Ffin. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and where people might know you from.
Hey, I'm Ffin. I'm very regularly around all of the in-person groups across Cardiff and Bristol, as well as appearing on streams across less popular and more popular channels like TPI or Imp of the North. I'll let you figure out which one's which.
Mara Joy, would like to go ahead and share your opinion first?
Yes, my opinion. I have many opinions about Clock Tower. This is one of my least controversial, I think. My opinion is that storytellers don't use the recluse as an outsider. And you'll notice I've not said some storytellers, I've said storytellers. I'm including myself and anyone who's ever storytold a game. I think recluse is one of the characters that I see run in a way that frustrates me the most. And I'll tell you for why. The way I always describe Clock Tower to people, to new players, is I say, I talk about how if you're on a good team, you're either a townsfolk who has a powerful ability that helps the good team win, and if you're an outsider, you have an ability that is actively detrimental to the good team. I don't think that's a controversial way to describe outsiders. I do think that the default way that people run the recluse is not detrimental to to the good team. Sometimes it's actively helpful, and that's I think a mistake. How many times have you been in a game where there's a chef 1 and people go, oh, we'll kill the recluse's neighbours? The recluse is not an empath. The recluse is an outsider. It's a recluse, and yet people insist on giving chef 1s when there's an evil player sitting next to the recluse. That is in no way unhelpful to the good team. If anything, it's actively helpful. I think the reason that this happens is because recluse is on Trouble Brewing. We've all run Trouble Brewing a bunch. We all know how the recluse works. We don't really think about it. So we're like, oh, there's an opportunity for the recluse to register as evil. It will be bad for the good team to register this character as evil, so I will do it. And then we see fortune tellers go up to one of their yeses and go, hey, I'm the librarian who's seen you as a recluse. And the recluse goes, I am the recluse. And now you have confirmed 2 players via an outsider. And that is not what outsiders are meant to do. My way to sort of deal with this is very simple. Just think about when you're registering the recluse as evil. Don't do it as a default. I ran a game at a convention not long ago where I didn't register the recluse as evil once for the entire game. They were executed in Final 3 as the demon. In that game, the recluse was an outsider. I'm not saying you need to never register it. I'm saying that you need to be thoughtful about when you do, and I'm talking to myself as well here, and I think it's a prime example of one of my favourite mechanics in the entire game, which is might or may. I love that there are characters that might do things at certain times and may do things at certain times. I just think we need to switch the default off of that being they will do those things. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Please enjoy a free drink on your way out. Sorry, we are going to discuss this. That's how this works. It's not just me giving an opinion and then leaving. But yeah, that is my, I hope, non-controversial opinion about Blood on the Clock Tower.
Yes, I actually agree with you on that. I've spoke with a lot of people when I've been like walking home after Clock Tower games, like going back to the station, and saying like, didn't misregister the recluse once that game. And they were the most suspicious thing ever, because too often, like you see an investigator ping and a fortune teller, yes, both on night 1. As soon as the fortune teller and the investigator talk to each other, they've like that's not helping. Yeah, like I've never registered the recluse for a chef 1 because that helps good. That's not what it's meant to do. It shouldn't do that. And yet everyone still latches on to that idea.
I agree with this with the opinion, but I do think there is perhaps a bit more nuance in it. So I do agree that I agree it's massively over registered. I especially Finn, your point just then about like an investigation of fortune teller. It's something I've wanted to be able to bluff for the longest time is having Recluse and Investigator as a bluff, and then having a minion claim to see the demon as something, and then the Fortune Teller gets a yes, and then you can just stick to your Recluse claim. I'm in that Investigator. I'm in that Fortune Teller. But I don't think that it completely. I think it still puts a detriment in some ways. So, for example, with the Fortune Teller getting a yes on the Recluse, there's still an entire other player within that Fortune Teller yes. For example, you can't go, I got a yes on the Recluse, therefore you can't be the demon, because they still can be the demon. As of like the chef point, again, I think that it's overdone, and I think that I would generally more towards not registering than registering in most situations. But again, that's also very much a symptom of the meta of it being over registered. I think if we lived in a world where people didn't register the Recluse ever, we would be doing the opposite. We'd be saying register the Recluse every single time. I think it's a really interesting balancing act.
That's probably true. I also think it's interesting because obviously the time you see the Recluse most often is obviously a Trouble Brewing, and you've discussed on this podcast before the issues with Trouble Brewing's outsiders, which isn't an issue really because you're introducing the game. However, we've all been in many games of Trouble Brewing where we're like, oh, these two players are definitely confirmed because they're both claiming outsider. You know, especially at higher player count. I think you're very right that it's like. If a fortune teller picks the Recluse on somebody and gets a yes, it's very helpful to then say if the fortune teller is poisoned, give them a yes on that other person later on, and not on the Recluse later on. Does that make sense? But it's hard to get these things to line up, and I think a big part of learning how to play Blood Clock Tower is learning how to kind of counteract outsiders as players of the game, as people who are trying to win the game. It is in everybody's nature to try and go, okay, this is a ability that's meant to harm us. How do we turn it to our advantage? You know, there's a lot of talk of such outsider as actually a townsfolk, like a mutant who breaks on day one is essentially like a virgin, right? So I understand why players do it. I think my main thing is, yeah, it's about the meta of it. It's about storytellers being aware of that meta of it and playing around with that. Because I tell my players all the time, I will never register a Recluse in a chef one. I will never do it. And then of course sometimes I do it because that's what you do, right? Yeah, but I just think it's because it's one of the sort of first four outsiders. I think it's just used quite carelessly. Is my main point.
I think it's probably better though that it is overused and underused from a perspective of it allows evil to bluff it. We lived, you know, if you had a storyteller that never registered the Recluse as evil, evil can't bluff Recluse, and so by its nature, you need to be able to like have the Recluse register as evil constantly, because if an evil player wants to bluff Recluse, they're going to be registering as evil constantly. If you have that sort of situation where the Recluse very rarely misregisters, then it's going to innately become suspicious when that Recluse is constantly registering. Again, it's a very delicate balancing act. I do agree with this, but I think that I understand why it's a problem, if that makes sense.
I may have went overzealously into the never register it as evil. Yeah, because that's any opinion should be held incredibly tightly, then thrown away at the drop of a hat. This is my opinion as an improviser and as a human being. I think being less predictable in how you use the Recluse is the key. I think if you're in a game and people are playing, it's a group that you regularly storytell for, and they're like, "Oh, Mara never does this," then I mean, it's storytelling 101, right? When you hear somebody say Mara never does this, the next game you do that thing. Literally. The next possible moment you do that thing, because otherwise the players win in the meta game that is predicting you. I like to think that Clock Tower is not me versus the players, except for trying to disrupt what they think I'm going to do. Yeah, I think ultimately this if you look at this is a sort of microcosm of a bigger opinion that outsiders are more complicated than people think they are. I guess sometimes people will just throw an outsider on a script or on a game and go, "Oh, this will work," and I'm like, "Does it?"
I think as well your point about like as an ST you should constantly change. That's not even necessarily true. Like if you hear a player say that you'd never do something, it can just be good to like change what you're doing so that innately a player won't try to meta you or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the characters that have might or may are the prime way of doing that, right? If you would never show a spy to an Undertaker, show a spy to an Undertaker, people will inevitably not believe it. It's like, I did once. It was a game that we were recording for content, so I felt quite bad for it because it ended on day 2. I was an empath who was made drunk by the storyteller and given a 0, and then the demon claimed recluse. And everyone went, that's weird, and then we killed the demon. And I don't think that's the storyteller's fault or our fault. I think that's just one of those things that happen. But I think ultimately it is a balancing act, like you said, yeah. Like I think all characters that you put into a game of Blood on the Clock Tower are kind of a balancing act, right? And if you are put in a recluse and you have an investigator and you have a chef and you have an empath and you have a fortune teller, I think you need to make a choice quite early on what you're going to do with that recluse, you know? And then stick to it.
Yeah, I think you need to decide if your recluse is going to be a minion or a demon. It can't be both in a game, or it very rarely could be both in a game to still be a detriment, I think.
If I'm the only player who nominated and the only player who voted, and both a flower girl and a town crier get a yes, I think something's gone wrong.
Like if you're on the investigator ping fortune teller yes night 1, you're sold. But if you're investigator ping night 1 and then a fortune teller yes on day 4, they're open star pass options.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just. Yeah. I think this is my least controversial opinion. Because I was expecting people to go correct, and I was like, good. I feel like I just wanted to have this conversation available to people who've been like going, man, yeah, my recluse keeps getting confirmed. I'm like, cool. You have the ability to stop that happening. The power is in your hands.
Like, a lot of the time as well, the recluse doesn't misregister in some cases where, for example, again, back on the investigator pings, you put the Baron and the recluse in the investigator pings as the Baron, and everyone goes, oh, well, there's no Baron in the game because you're the recluse that's misregistered, then no one's drunk. Because so many people expect it to, that they just disregard what is actually being shown.
Yeah. And I think as a storyteller, you probably have an idea. If you're running with a regular group, you have an idea of which players will use that and which players won't.
Yeah. That was one of the opinions I put forward to Mia that she didn't go for, which was metaing the storyteller is part of the solve.
Oh yeah, I think that would just be a unanimous nod of the head from everybody, right?
I would disagree with it a bit, but
that's not the opinion that we have.
Yeah, we'll not worry about it. My opinion is new/newer players shouldn't play like they see online. So we enjoy a huge community in Blood on the Clock Tower. Obviously, a lot of people come into this game having watched No Rose Bard, Good Time Society, TPI streams, Yogcast in Minecraft, things like that, and they bring that to go, I really want to play now. But they come into it with the air of, oh, I've seen it run from a storyteller perspective, so I know what's going on. No, you don't. You need to play less like you see they do because they know each other. You're walking into a new group, you're going to get confused, you're going to get lost, you're only going to get your own information and your own lies to start with, and you've got to try and build socials out of it. And socials matter a huge amount in this game. My biggest sticking point with what comes out of that is that people will stick vehemently to 3 for 3s. If you come up to me and you're like, cool, so my 3 is Undertaker, Washwoman, or Recluse, I'm like, make it a 2 and I might be interested, because I'm not giving you anything back. Because the amount of times I've been in a game, like, don't get me wrong, I adore playing with new players. Like, having them come into the game, experience it for the first time. Like, I'm quite lucky. If I wanted to, I could play with new players every week because our in-person group in Bristol is always growing. We've actually started to limit now. It's mad. Some people that come in haven't watched the game online, but have an idea of what it is, and they will do some batshit crazy stuff that you don't expect them to. And I'm just there like, what do you mean? Because I love seeing it, because they don't know the meta. They don't know star passing's really powerful. They don't know about the recluse misregistering all the time. They figure out the game how they think it should be played. And that's what I think everyone should do coming into it new. You don't follow how you've seen other people play it. If you just come in having watched patter streams, you're going to think everyone's a chaotic mess. We're not. We are lovely, but a lot of the time, that's how some people try to think they have to be.
Okay. I feel partly responsible for this, in a way. And to the greater Clock Tower community, I do apologise. I also think free for frees are nonsense. But for some reason, that's just how it's always been done on the rules board, and I don't know why. I think what people sometimes forget, and I think about this in the context of I'm an improv teacher. I teach people how to do improv. That's a thing that I do. I'm also part of a show, the Spontaneous Players. We've been doing stuff together for about 10 years. So I'll teach people, oh, this is how you do this, this is how you do this, and then they'll come and watch me do a show, and I'll be like, oh, don't do what I'm doing. I've known these people for 10 years. The way we perform together is going to be different to the way that you perform with someone you met last week. So I think you've hit the nail on the head, Ffin, with that's one of the issues, is people see a group of friends playing the game the way that that group of friends plays the game, and then goes, cool, I will instantly do that. And it does lead to a lot of weird sort of specific behaviours. Like you say, when we run our beginners game in Edinburgh, sometimes people go, oh yeah, I've watched a lot of Clock Tower, so I probably don't need to do the beginners game. And we're like, no, watching it and playing it are so fundamentally different that even if you understand the rules of the game, you don't know how you're going to feel playing the game. You don't know how it's going to feel to try and keep all this information in your head, or try to write it down in notebooks, or try to read people socially. It does mean you're probably in a better position potentially to understand some of the complicated nuances, but also you might overestimate your own ability because you've watched stuff. Does that make sense?
I want to give a small bit of pushback here. Again, I fundamentally agree with this. But I think that if you are a player who's only watched Clock Tower, I think the reason that you're going to the reason you will have enjoyed watching that content is because of the way that people have behaved, and you're not going to see the fact that these people have been friends for X number of years, meaning that they're able to have formed this group where they can play like this. Players can't see that. They can only see that the payoff of those years of friendship and that social experience. And so that is innately what gets them interested in the game. And it again, it sucks to be told hey, take a back seat, there's all this stuff you haven't seen. And I do agree with it, but I think that as a new player, you'll have seen someone doing crazy nonsense things online and you'll be like, wow, that's really cool. I want to explore doing that within this space. I think the videos give you that false confidence of, I know how to run already, but you do need to walk, you do need to play that beginner game. And there's no content out there that says that. Because quite frankly, that's going to be really boring content, because no one's going to watch that apart from so it's not going to get promoted at all. So no new player is ever going to see that to know that that should be their experience for their first games or so. So yes, I agree with it, but I also understand why new players do that, and I think that it's really important to be I understand why you're doing this. We need to temper expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. Because part of what I noted down as well is that people learn board games from watching YouTube videos. The amount of times I've watched RTFM watch it played, Fun with Boxes, etc. To figure out, oh, I'm going around my friend's house tomorrow, I need to figure out how I'm going to play Hegemony before I get there, so they don't have to sit and do a 1 hour rules explanation or whatever. And so people watching Clock Tower want to play it, they'll watch it online to see how it's played, and will then take that with them. But obviously that's where some of it comes from, is that, like you say, it's fun. That's why we like it, is because you get to do dumb things with friends.
Yeah, I think, Mia, you're correct, and obviously the people who are watching it and then wanting to play it and have fun the way they've seen it done are not wrong for doing that. I think, and also I've been in videos where people have tried to make videos that are introductory. The whole concept of the channel Noobs on the Goof Tower was originally, hey, Chris Grace would get new players to come in and play with nice people. Then those new players just stuck around. So now it's just a group of people who play together on a weekly basis. And we do stuff that is very not newbie friendly. I've been in. I used to play a lot with the Grimoire back when I was an Insomniac, and we ran a game once that was specifically to be hey, this is to introduce concepts to players. So everyone was describing how everything worked and talking through all their decisions and all this stuff. and I believe it was one of their least watched videos, because you're right that people don't want to watch people learning the game. They want to watch people who know what they're doing and who are having fun with each other. And and you're right that that's not a bad thing. Ultimately, it's part of my livelihood, so I can't say it's a bad thing.
Again, the only target audience for like absolute beginner introduction to Clock Tower video where everyone explains everything and whatnot is someone who's never watched Clock Tower. So you're promoting to an audience that you don't have, and so you can't promote to them, unfortunately.
I think ultimately the way around this, if it is something that needs to be got around, is what we've talked about. How when you're running a game for new players, just sort of letting them know that, hey, yes, you've watched a lot of this, but just so you know, it is going to feel different. You can do whatever you want, because rule number one is you can say whatever you want at any time. But being aware that people will realise quite quickly that certain players that they've watched online, the way they play is because of like skills they've developed. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I was to play a game with a new player and they're like, "Oh, I've been watching Patter's stream and I love how Ponko plays. I'm going to play like Ponko." I'd be like, "No, you're not. You're fundamentally not going to be able to play like Ponko, because Ponko is a very intelligent player who also is a shark. This is these. You're just seeing the shark bit. You're not seeing the fact that he has incredible social reads and great ways of solving the game, because you've not played enough to know that." And I think it's very funny when you see people go, "Oh, I'm a chaotic player like Patas." And I'm like, no, I don't know if you are. You're a chaotic player like yourself, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Everyone finding their own abilities is the best thing. Develop your own instincts, develop where you can see what happened.
I have to tone down how I play with newer groups. Like if I show up to like a random group and I'm gonna play a game with them, I can't play the same way I would play on stream, because the way I play is like people would know that. Like for example, I claim the Widow Call all the time. I can't do that in like a group I show up to, because on day 4 someone's gonna be like, "Oh, but there's a widow in play," and then I'm gonna have to walk it back, and then they're gonna kill me for claiming to hear the widow's call when I didn't hear the widow's call. In the patches group, I at least get like 2 days out of it.
Yeah, everyone just marks you with the widow's note
Yeah,
and is like,
yeah,
all right,
exactly.
cool, we'll find out if there is one in a couple of
Yeah.
days.
If there's you and 11 other players and you draw the saint and you're not claiming saint and all those players are new, they're not going to understand.
Oh, they're not going to factor in that I could be the saint. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to go, "Well, we can kill Mia because Mia's not claiming saint." And I'm going to be like, "No, Mia can always be the saint. That's always a possibility." Yeah, I think what Ffin, what you said towards the end of that is really good. Really good way of thinking about it is people will develop their own skills and playstyle as they go. And if that is, again, to use a comedy analogy, I've seen a lot of people on open mic nights who are trying to be James Acaster, or trying to be Frankie Boyle, or trying to be another successful white man. And it's not until they've been doing it for a while that they go, "Oh, actually, my voice is this."
Carve out your own niche, because like we've all been invited to play games with streams and groups and whatever else because of what we can offer. It's not because we're a replacement for someone who's leaving and so we're similar enough. It's that we all bring our own brand of silliness and dumbness to it at the same time.
I've actively told players to not try and learn how to play the game from No Rose Barred, because we are not Clock Tower players putting on an entertaining show. We are comedians playing a game, and that is a very specific distinction. And I play differently on a No Rose Barred game than I do on a game on Patter Stream, than I do on a game in real life in Edinburgh, than I do in a game with on Ken Cheng's Discord, because like these are all sort of different situations. You know what I mean? I think people forget that a lot of the time people are making plays for content, and I think sometimes people get really annoyed that people are making plays for content. But then I'm like, but if we just solved it on day 1, that's a type of interesting, I guess. But is it? But also, we've just rented out this set. It costs loads of money. We really can't end the game on day 1. Actively bad.
Yeah, I think we can just lose all that footage of all the setup and all the like camera shots going around to then just ditch it all.
That's not a side that players see from the online space, and it's not a side you can ever see from the online space because, again, no one's going to make that because there's no audience. Was there anything else anyone wanted to say on that opinion?
Always remember, you are allowed to make notes on your phone or with a pen
I'm
and
a
Yes.
big advocate for notebooks. Everyone
I-
should use a notebook.
I have seen Mia's incredibly detailed notes. I don't make them myself, but I'm glad that some people do.
Like, I will if I'm playing BMR because that helps to keep track of things. But again, you don't see people taking notes online, so you'd think you're not allowed to. Absolutely.
I had a game of Fall of Rome. Oh my god, how many years ago now? I want to say pushing 3 years ago now, like 2, 3 years ago. And I was making such detailed notes. Usually when I make notes, I will include like I have like a death and execution table. So like day one, this player dies. Of course, the storyteller is always the first name in the death column because they die night one. Then we have the day one execution, then the night two death, and the night two execution, so on and so forth. But also within the Fall of Rome stuff, I was tracking all of the nominations because that's important on Fall of Rome, who nominates who. And I was also tracking all the Spartacus claims. And I remember at one point nominating Gambling, who then made the delightful stand bearer comment of there is a mistake in Mia Gwen's notes. So I then had to give my notebook to the storyteller. I can't remember what Gambling ended up trying to bluff. If I'd got a mistake or not, but like I love using a notebook in person. It's so fun.
But thinking of new things like that, like, I would never in a million years have thought, let's have a look in Mia's notebook as a bit of information. Like, I think my attempted snake charming as a good twin ploy the other day was a lot of fun. Didn't get anywhere, but I hadn't seen it before.
Well, you say it didn't get anywhere. Finn, watching that game, I was like, I think the majority of people trust Finn because of that play, which is wild. But again, if you'd been someone that people didn't know who'd made that play, I think people would have went, that seems very evil, you know? Yeah, like, I wouldn't recommend somebody in their first game of S&V trying that. It probably wouldn't go well.
Kind of a follow-up to another opinion I've given on the podcast before. At time of recording, it was the one that went up yesterday, so I don't necessarily expect you to listen to it. But it was that travelers, it's okay for travelers to live into Final 3, and that like your default assumption shouldn't be let's exile a traveler going into Final 3. This is sort of an amendment to that opinion, or like a thing that I also want to note, and I'm interested in your opinions on this. But travelers should travel. So what I mean by that is that yes, I think that it's okay for travelers to live into Final 3. That's a blanket statement, and this is perhaps going into more nuance. If a traveler travels in on night 1, the storyteller's knowledge of the game state on night 1 is so much more different to the knowledge of the game state on night 4. If you travel in on night 1, you should travel out or be exiled at some point in that game. I think there's like an optimal length for a traveler to be involved in a game because so often they have such game-changing abilities that to leave them in for an entire game is like it almost makes them like the main character of the game, not even by like the person doing anything, just by like the function of their ability. And it can like make such massive swings for both teams because as well like a traveler should generally, I think the advice is something like every 2 out of 3 times they should help their team, and then because they're so strong, they should probably help the other team at some point. So if you have, for example, a barista who's allowed a poisoner to get 2 poisons off, and then the Serenovus got to make 2 people mad yesterday, tonight give the Savant 2 true statements to sort of balance out the double poisoning, the double madness. But also like there's a point where like we should be able to say this has been enough of a barista game. I now want to like solve this. And like but I also think a storyteller is more willing and free and open to put a barista in night 1, where like the game state is so open compared to like night 4. Like a night 4 barista is gonna the needle is going to move so much more because the needle is so much the sort of frame of the game is so much smaller at like so when you're deeper that like a single night of barista moves that needle is so much more in one team's favor. I think the travelers should travel. But I think that like if you travel in Final 5, yeah, sure, we'll let you live till Final 3. The storyteller's probably made a choice around you traveling in at Final 5. Whereas if you travel in on night 1, expect to be gone by day 4 or day 5. don't expect to still be here, I think. But yeah, that's my opinion.
I love this opinion, Mia. I love it. I think travelers are the. I don't like. This is not a negatively held thing. Travelers are the characters in the base game that were least thought about. I don't think that's a negative against the game. I think travelers are a very cool idea and a very cool thing. But I do also know that they were quite late in the development, and they were called different names and had different ways they worked. And you're so right that travelers have unbelievably powerful abilities if they are in the game for the entire game. But this leads to this weird thing where if somebody's like, "Oh, can I travel in at the beginning of this game?" and you make them a Voodon, and then on day one someone's like, "Let's exile the Voodon. I don't want to play with a Voodon." That's mean in a lot of ways, you know. Let them have an ability. I'm a firm believer in letting travelers have an ability, but I also agree that the game is very hard to balance if you just have this extra player on one of the team that has an incredibly powerful ability. And just throughout, I think I've been reading. I go on a Reddit maybe too often. And I was reading that somebody was talking about travelers and that, and somebody's going, yeah, travelers are for when people are late to the game or when people might need to leave early in the game, or for players who don't want the stress of being a demon. And I don't know how much I agree with that second thing. And I think I understand the impetus of that. Like, there are people who would get too stressed with the possibility of being a demon, and they shouldn't be not allowed to play. I understand that, but I also think the potential of being a demon is such a huge part of the game that I think I don't mean to be like, get over it, person. I mean, there's other things that we can deal with about that rather than just letting this player be an incredibly powerful character. Because the most frustrating thing for evil is a good traveler who's in for the whole game and is trusted, right? Like, that's game breaking. If everyone's like, oh, I just fully trust this traveler, we just have an extra good player at all times. Is not how the game is balanced. The game is balanced around, the number of townsfolk, the number of minions, the number of outsiders. It kind of gets into wobbly territory where you start using travels. The other day, I ran a game for completely at a improv festival, and people were like, "Oh, I was like, there's a hard cap of 15. And people were going, oh, but the game can be played by more than that. And I'm like, it can be. It won't be. I'm not having somebody's first game be a 17-player game where I have to explain two very powerful characters who don't obey the rules of the game. I think my basic rule of thumb is if you want to be a traveller, I hope it's because you've just arrived late or because you're going to leave early. That other way is just so hard for me to balance that it stresses me out.
Yeah, like I'm very much the if you travel in, you travel out type storyteller. I say to people, if you want to travel because you'd want to be a demon, then I'm going to exile you. Yeah, just basically, okay, you've had your time now. The game's starting to get too hard to balance. I need you to go. Because I did one, again, to bring it back to Fall of Rome, I ran a game where I had a 12-player game, 3 people were travellers, and the Fall of Rome travellers are wild anyways, which meant it was 2 evils. I had the mercenaries in, so 2 of the same traveller, 1 of opposing alignments, and something else, I don't know what. But because they were so shy about pulling a proper character, they didn't want to, and they wanted to travel. That was one of the worst games I think I've ever ran for just how bad it felt. Because you see, travellers are incredibly strong characters. They should be used sparingly, and for when they are needed, like for people who do need to leave early, arrive late.
I think hearing you talk about Fall of Rome travellers has reminded me that my favourite travellers are the travellers on the Muppet on a Clock Tower script, because they have abilities that are not ludicrously powerful. One of them is just, you are the tallest person in the room, and I think that's delightful.
At some point, I have a wizard wish of just the storyteller gains the Big Bird ability.
Oh, that is
I want to see what happens when the storyteller cheats.
Something bad happens to them, to the storyteller. Also, we're also taking into one thing we're missing is because we keep saying travelers are incredibly powerful abilities, and that is true. Or travelers do nothing because the players of the game don't let them do anything. It's why there's the house rule of Gunslinger that it's the first nomination that gets votes, Because otherwise, people just go, oh, here's a way to break this. I'm going, that's not in the spirit of the character. You know?
The one that obviously gets this flack the most is the Bishop. I adore the Bishop. I love having it in play. I love travelling as it. It never makes it past day 2 because everyone's like, oh, I want to nominate now. I want to get rid of this person. It's like, well, talk to your storyteller. Bend the Rhea, see if you can't.
Bishop is such an underrun and such a deceptively hard character to properly run that like players don't. I think generally players don't speak to their storytellers as much as they should do, either as good or evil. Like, just let your storyteller know that you're doing things. I played a game once where I was the mayor, and I'd had a bit prepared that I'd been like sitting on for 6 months, and it was that I wanted to try and get a mayor win by bribing people for the mayor win.
I was in this game.
Yeah. And so in that game, I went up to the storyteller. I was like, look, I've drawn the mayor token. This is the first time I've drawn it in 6 months. I've got some like treats to bribe the players with. So if you could, I think it would make a fun like end to a game. So maybe just consider bouncing up from me a little bit more. I won't be claiming mayor to like try and do that. But like that's me as a good player telling the storyteller, like, this is what I want my part in this game to be. And you can absolutely like go up and say, these are my suspicions right now. Or like even a storyteller should be listening. You should be saying these things in town so that your storyteller can hear, so your storyteller knows what interesting bishop nominations they can do. Because it's always fun. Make a bishop nomination where your players are like, oh yeah, this is the player we want to kill. And you're just sitting there as a storyteller being like, oh, this poor player who's been framed to high heaven by the poisoned information. I have to let you die to appease town.
Yes, I think one of the four main, like the big 4 rules that you say at the beginning is don't be afraid to talk to your storyteller, right? Like that's yeah, it's built into the game, and it is for things like that, and absolutely for things like travelers. Like I think the reason people have had bad times with travelers is either because they've been added sort of arbitrarily and not thoughtfully, which is, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, a 16th player has shown up, we only have 1 grimoire, we kind of have to have a traveler, or something like that. And then people goes, oh, you can pick one. There's like, because I think by default you're meant to let the person pick.
Yeah,
traveler.
you are.
Yeah. Which is a nice idea in theory, but sometimes they'll go, oh, I want to be this. You're like, cool, this is going to break the game. Could you... I don't mind you choosing that, but could you potentially choose something else? I think... oh my god, that example of the bishop thing. If I hear that everyone's going, I think we want to execute this person. Well, maybe we want to execute this person. That's going to be the first person I nominate with the bishop, because then players are going to go, wait, why is Mara okay with this? Yeah, why is this? And then you take ages before your next nomination. Yeah.
I also want to bang the deviant drum. It's the best traveler. It still comes with some balancing issues in the sense that like travelers prevent like a all evil final 3 wipe, which is like a huge balance issue. But it doesn't raise the balance issues that are present in things like the butcher or the barista or like the bureaucrat. Other travelers are available that are broken that don't start with the letter B. But like deviant, like it's a purely social traveler, and like I think it just lets you engage in the game. It lets you, if you're a good deviant, it lets you go like, I want to help solve this. I want to try and engage in like the mechanical bit. If you're an evil deviant, it allows you to like sow that mistrust. I think that like honestly, if I'm ever like a traveler and I'm not the deviant, something's gone wrong. Because it's the best traveler.
Yeah, we have wildly... I mean, I love the deviant as a character for anyone other than me. Because like, the way I always describe it is it feels like a busman's holiday. I'm a comedian. I get paid for this. You're not paying me to be funny in this game.
But again, Mara, you can change the deviant. It says in the almanac that like being funny is hard on the spot. Change it to be like ensured a positive atmosphere or like included this player.
You're correct. Yeah, it does say. I know. It's mostly my pushback to it is mostly a meme pushback at this point. Because I have famously said on multiple places that deviant is the worst character, and I don't think that's true. I just sometimes say things to be funny. But yeah, like deviant is almost like a self-balancing character, right?
Yeah, it's exactly your choice as to what happens with it. Like going back to the almanac point, I love the almanac. How to play as good and how to play as evil is exactly the same, except with different comedians listed at the end. Because it's there to make people feel good. You're literally there, not to be a class clown, but to just be a mood lightener.
Yeah, it's almost it's essentially on par with the Muppets ones that I was talking about earlier, right? Like,
It's a character that, like, when you read it, does nothing in quotation marks, but like actually playing it, it's you can't understand the character just from reading the ability. You have to actually engage with it and like play games as it. One of my favorite memories of a deviant was at Ravenswood stock. Where Nikki traveled into 8 games simultaneously as the deviant in all of them. And I remember Nikki particularly fucked our game because they chose their chair arbitrarily, and then it made it so that like the Shigenja, we were like, well, this player can't be the demon because of the Shigenja information, and it basically ended up that the Shigenja information we were building that like it could be arbitrary between the deviant and someone else, and it was terrible. But like you can't do that as any other traveler. I don't.
I love stuff like that though. I think one of the big yeah, I think one of the biggest issues with travelers in general is people don't play with them as much. So we reject things that we are not familiar with, right? Like I said before, that example of a Voodoo has ended from day one and then gets voted out immediately. I've had that happen on multiple occasions because people are like, "No, I don't like this." It's like, okay, that's kind of a weird reaction to I don't like this character. Not a weird reaction. I think it's an understandable reaction, but I think it's part of the mystique, I guess, of a traveler of the travelers is that they exist in a sort of liminal space where people have heard of them, people have seen the tokens, but then sometimes they haven't. Like we had a traveler at a game in our in-person games like a couple of just like last month, and there's somebody who's been playing with us for like 2 years who went, how do travelers work? And I was like, oh yeah, you've never played with a traveler. Let me explain. And as I was explaining, I was going, and you can exile them at any time. And then I said, as an aside to the players, but don't do that on day one. That's a dick move. You know?
I very much seen like travelers be angel protected as like a rules way around that, which like isn't the best. Like you can never use rules to fix social problems, but it's like I think the best thing that Clock Tower offers. But also I think if you're in a group where like you need to angel protect the traveler on day one, maybe I don't want to play in your group.
Yeah. Maybe just have a conversation, which is it also feels bad though because like I was in a BMR game with Verdon on day one. Yeah, it was BMR. But see, this is my thing about like I've got knowledge of all these things, but I can't quite ever remember. And I kind of felt bad because somebody went immediately at the beginning of the day was like, yeah, let's exile the Verdon. And I kind of didn't snap at them. No, I probably did snap at them. I was like, or we could let them play the game. And then I was like, oh, that was a passive aggressive way of dealing with that. When what I should have done was, after the vote, got up to this guy and go, hey, remember that this person is playing the game, you know? I think travelers can lead to some bad feeling, and I think ultimately it all comes down to that thing of, are they actually being used as travelers, and are your players do your players understand what that means? And it's not a negative if they don't. Like, you can just explain it to them.
I'm like to bring it back to my original point. I think that like people could maybe engage with travelers more positively if, for example, like the Voodon has traveled in on day one, they will leave play on day 4. Like I think that a player is more willing to because what that player is trying to do is say like I want to get rid of you because I'm worried you'll be here for the whole game. But if you had that of like you'll be gone by day 4, whereas if you have a traveler join day 5, they will be here unless till the end of the game unless you do something now. Like I think that's okay.
What's your guys' opinion on demons killing travelers? Funny is one of the answers. Yes.
It's funny, but also like it's how it makes the game unbalanced. In that, like the demon shouldn't have to have killed that player.
Yeah, because that problem should have worked itself out.
And I do remember one time I was running a game, the demon picked the traveller to die in the night, completely forgetting they were a traveller. And they woke up and were like, no, why am I dead? I was the judge. And everyone's like, oh shit, yeah, why are you dead? Which made it funnier when they were later bone collected as a dead judge. On the night the bone collected, I was poisoned. It just all went downhill so fast.
2 of my favourite traveller experiences One was a game, I can't remember where it was. It might have been on Noobs. I think it was on Noobs. Raj travelled in on day one, and then on night two was killed by the demon. So he travelled out, and then travelled in again immediately as a different traveller. And I'm like, that feels correct. And then there was a game that we played at GLC that Ed ran. It was a Bad Moon Rising with 18 players. I was the apprentice. Ponko was the hidden gnome, the unknown, and Claire was the judge. I don't know if, well, because like we knew that Ponko was the gnome. We just didn't know who his amigo was, and we got into this very fun situation where we were like, oh, we need to execute this person today, but we need to make sure that Claire, who seems very obviously evil, is exiled before this nomination. And as we have this conversation, Orwell nominates the person who we need to kill, and we're all like, no, and Orwell's like, so then we get the votes that was on I think it was on Raj at this point. They get the votes on him to kill him, and then Claire goes, oh, I don't think so. So it doesn't happen, and then I immediately say, I nominate Claire for exile, and then Ponko immediately says, I stabbed Mara. And I it's one of the greatest experiences I've had in a game of Clock Tower where I'm like, that was all set up specifically by Ed for this to happen, and it was so funny. And I threw my script in the air, and it was like, well, well, that was delightful, and that's because we it was a group of people who obviously we all know each other well. Let's actually say we all know each other well. Those people I hadn't met there, but it's just a nice vibe. People were having fun. People were like, it's good that there are travelers here. Actually, it's fun, you know. And I think ultimately that's I think the way that let travelers be travelers is both a thing to say about storytellers and also for the other non-traveler.
One thing that does happen is that like you do sometimes play big games where like you get travelers in the bag is always the way I see it run now, which it's great fun. You also do need hidden travelers for it though. I think it improves the experience.
Hey, Caffeine had one good idea.
Exactly. It's a shame we couldn't remember which ones were on it.
No, Caffeine has many ideas.
Oh, poor Caffeine.
That was so
Poor
good.
Caffeine. Catching strays. Catching strays.
But yeah, like that is one situation where like it can sometimes be bad of like if you pull this character you're going to be dead on day 5. But I think acknowledging the impact that you have in the 4 or 5 days where you are around, you've had more impact than like half the good team could have ever dreamt of having probably.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And remember, death is not the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, travelers go through the entire like gamut of the 4 rows. That's
They
fun.
do, yeah.
Yeah.